Hey guys, how's it going? Hope you're doing really well. Hope your mining's going great. I'm in this exciting video. We're going to do another mining rig build. It's actually only half a build, to be honest. It's more like an upgrade, I guess you could say, because what I'm going to be doing is upgrading this little rig. I'm going to be expanding that out using these cards here. 6700 XTs. Got 3 of those to add. I've only got 2 at the moment. I've got another one coming, a new power supply and a bigger frame. And yeah, the reason I haven't done a build video in a while, sorry about that guys, it's just I've just been so busy, and also been looking for some specials because the cost of everything's just gone crazy. Cost of GPUs has gone through the roof, and it's just really hasn't been worth it. So I managed to get these for a reasonably good price, about 1200, and for the hash power that they have, it's not too bad. I mean, it's still a lot of money, but and had to get a bigger hard drive because obviously we've got the additional page file that's going to be needed for the DAG file for these 3. Another 56 gig needed. So that's something to watch if you're using these bigger cards, more powerful cards. You need a bigger SSD. So 240, that will do the job. Bigger power supply, 1000 watt power supply. Good thing about these bigger power supplies is you get more connections as well. So I've got 6 PCIe connections to use there, which is great. It's always a pain when you don't have enough connections for your build. And what else? 72 centimeter frame, because obviously I'm going to be reusing this little riserless motherboard, and they're quite long, so I need the extra space. Like as you can see, it wouldn't fit down beside the power supply on this little frame, and also the cards would end up being too close together as well. But this has been a really great little rig. I really love these AMD cards. They're fantastic. They just, not a single issue with them. They just do the job. They're quiet, they're cool. They literally are making no heat at all. The fans are hardly moving. They're fantastic. In fact, I'm not even sure I'm going to bother with the fans on this build. The chassis fans, I just don't think they're needed. This card here doesn't get any hotter than these. So we'll just keep it simple, and yeah, should be good. And with Ethereum going to the moon at the moment, at least over the last few days, it's never been a better time to get into mining, I reckon. So I'll whack all this together and I'll stop the video along the way, and we can talk about what I'm doing. If this is the first time you've seen a build video, if you want to go more sort of step by step, I've got some previous videos you can check out where I just take you right through the build from the start to the finish. But in this one we'll move a bit quicker through it, and yeah, we'll go from there. Unfortunately, I do have to rebuild the OS because I've got a new hard drive has to go on there, so it's going to be a new install. I always run Windows just because I know it. I know a lot of you guys out there use Hive OS, and that's cool too, but I just prefer to use Windows, so I've got Windows going on here. And T-Rex miner, actually no, it won't be T-Rex. T-Rex is only for NVIDIA cards, so it's going to be one of the other miners, and probably Team Red Miner. But anyway, we'll get to all of that, and we'll see how we go. Alright, see you in a bit. Okay, so that's the frame box opened up. Here's what you get with it. You don't get a screwdriver, but that's pretty much the only tool you need to put it together. You get your bottom plate, you get these 2 braces, the front and the rear. As you'll see, this one's been banged up in shipping. That's pretty normal. I've yet to have one actually that hasn't had some kind of a twist or something in it, but it's easy enough to straighten out. The steel isn't exactly heavy duty, and the boxes that they come in is just cardboard, so you're going to get that as long as it's not too bad. It's just a frame. At the end of the day, you get your screw pack with it. You get a little plate there that's for the front of the power supply. I'll show you that. And then you get a on-off switch for the motherboard, which actually comes in handy. And this one had some little instructions. That's the first time I've had one that's come with those. So that was interesting. Maybe they have decided that then the instructions are needed for some people. Maybe they've had some complaints. And pretty much a monkey could put it together, I reckon, but yeah, you never know. So pretty easy. 1, 2, 3, like 5 or 6 parts, that's all. And put it together, no problem. So I'll work that together and come back to you. Okay, so there's the frame all together. It's a doddle really, pretty easy. All you need is a Phillips or a Posi drive screwdriver. They give you this a little foam strip that you can put along the crossbar there, so that your cards don't slide so much on the metal. So that's quite a good idea. But that's all there is to it really. Just identify the front by just checking the location of the plates at the bottom. And there you have it. So that's the power supply in place. You can see that's where the little tab they give you goes. And the black screws come with the power supply. They're the ones to use because they fit the threads properly. If you try and use these ones, the thread is slightly different. And you can have 2 power supplies on these rigs. They have the mounting for it, and they give you this little extra plate for when you mount a power supply on the right hand side, just so that it's got some bracing at the front. And yeah, I've got 2 power supplies on this size frame in one of my other builds, and the standard ATX motherboard fits quite nicely in the middle. But with these longer riserless boards, we'll need most of that space, so it should work out quite well. So what I like to do is I like to get as much as I can all done and assembled before I turn my rig off, because obviously it's mining the whole time. It's going to seem extremely tight of me, but it's just an efficiency thing. I don't want to shut it down and start pulling pieces off it until I've got everything ready to go on here, because we want to minimize downtime as much as possible, right? That's my excuse and I'm sticking to it. So I've got all my cables out. I'm going to get those in and basically lined out. Something that is worth noting with these riserless motherboards is that the slots need to be powered. So I'll show you how I'm going to do that, because it does require a bit of extra cabling, but I have a plan. So just put a couple of the cards on there just to check spacings and just sort of get a rough idea of how I'm going to lay it out. I've left a space here for that 3rd card when it arrives, and then the smaller cards, the 6600s, will go on here. So I just like to get a rough layout, rough idea of layout. But obviously before I put any more cards on, we've got to get the board in place so we've got access to it. But these are just an awesome looking card, and they get pretty good hash rates, so we'll get the rig up and running, and then it'll be interesting to see how they compare with the 6600s, which are already such an awesome little card. One thing to note is obviously you need 2 8-pins for these. It's typical of a lot of these bigger cards, and it will be interesting to see what the current draw is with them as well once they're dialed in and tuned in. It may be that I need to put a bigger power supply on, but we'll see how this goes with this 1000. Remember, you only can use a maximum of about 80%. You've got to check the efficiency of your power supply as well. So this one here this RM1000 is rated for 80. So that's one of the ways you can tell. You can use up to 80% of its continuous rating. It doesn't pay to push them to the max, I guess, because I don't expect you're going to have a fire. It's likely to just shut down or something like that, but it's best to play it safe. So yeah, we'll get that, get the motherboard on next. Oh, I was going to show you this as well. I've got my cables laid out. It's just something I like to do, just to count the connections and see that I'm going to have enough power and how I'm going to route everything. And you'll see these. This is not something I typically use. These are the little SATA to 6-pin connectors that come with the risers, and these are only good for a maximum of 45 watts, so it's important not to use them for anything that's going to draw more current than that. So I would never use them for example, for the riser, to power the risers, and you definitely wouldn't use them to power the cards, right? That would be just, you'd never do that. So I wouldn't use them for the risers, I wouldn't use them for the cards, but what I am going to use them for on this build is just to power the slots on the motherboard, which draw only about 3.3 watts, so it's almost nothing. It's a bit of a strange thing with these motherboards, a little bit of a quirk, because they are designed to be used without risers. If you do use them with risers, then you need to power the both the riser and the slot on the board. So you got to allow for a little bit more cabling like that. But hopefully, once we get it all bundled up and a little bit of cable management, it won't be too bad. Okay, cool. Next steps. These are the risers that I'm using, just because I already had them. If you check out one of my earlier videos, you'll see I did a video about comparing different risers, and there are some better risers than these available now, but I think these will be fine for this build. And they've got the connections that I need. Got the 6-pin, which is what we'll be using, so they should be just fine. And got the SSD ready. Yeah, so that's about as far as I can go without turning off the rig and tearing it down. This is going to be an emotional moment. This rig has been up since I built it. It literally hasn't even been rebooted. It's just been rock solid. So it's a bit sad, really. No, it's all good. So we'll get this thing teared down, we'll get the other motherboard on, and we'll be good to go. So before I fit it onto the frame, I'll just show you this motherboard if you haven't seen one before. It's the BTC T37. You can just get them from Amazon, AliExpress, mining stores, whatever is your favorite place to get your gear from. But this little board, honestly, I can't rate it highly enough for the price. It comes with the RAM already installed, although I upgraded from the standard 4 gig to 8. You may not have to do that, you can try it, but you know what Windows is like with 4 gig of RAM, it's not great, so they're so cheap. It uses the SODIMM laptop memory, you can see that there. And then it comes with a little Celeron CPU already installed and CPU cooler, so you can probably recognize that that part of the board looks like what you'd see if you opened up an old laptop. And I think basically that's what it is. They just kind of recycle laptop components, or at the very least laptop technology. And there's your front panel there. But honestly, they just work a treat. So you can see that the slots have their own capacitors, so they are powered. So each of these powers a slot. So you do have to bear that in mind. The slots have to be powered on this board, even if you aren't using them for graphics cards and you're just using them for a pass-through using the USB. You still got to power them, but they only take just a couple of watts. This whole board, when it's running, I've tested it, uses less than 40 watts. So that's everything, including the CPU, the board itself. It's a super efficient little board. Okay, so I'll get that mounted. That's going to go pretty much like that. As you can see, there's plenty of space on this frame for it, and it should work a treat. So we'll get that mounted up, and then I'll show you how I'm going to cable it. So what I'm going to do for mounting, the screw holes don't line up. Right, you might be able to get one in or two. You may be able to fidget with it and get it to line up, but because these boards aren't made for this frame, or the frame isn't made for the board, it's made for ATX motherboards. So the screw holes don't line up. So the little standoff lugs that you would normally use and screws aren't suitable for this. So, but that's no big deal, because bearing in mind that the cards aren't going directly into the motherboard, it's only going to be the USB connection. So there's really nothing going on that's going to require the motherboard to be moved about or any pressure put on it. So what I'm going to do is I'm just using some of this double-sided tape, and I've put some foam, self-adhesive foam. It's about 3mm. And the reason for that is you don't want any of the solder connections underneath the motherboard that you can see to short out on the steel frame, obviously. So that's going to serve as a standoff, and then the double-sided tape you can see there will just keep it set down quite nicely. It won't go anywhere. So I'm going to do that now, and then we'll start connecting up the rest of the cables. So you can see I've got the board in place, and I've got the power cables connected for powering the slots on the board. So again, it's very low current draw, only a few watts, so quite safe to use these little SATA cables. And those are just daisy chained from the 6 pins on the power supply. I've used 2, so 4 connections via each one. So do your own research depending on your own particular project, but for me, I'm quite happy with that. I'm sure that will be just fine. But again, as I said, I just reiterate that those 6 pin to SATA cables are really not suitable for any high current draw application. No good for powering the cards, and in most cases no good for powering risers either. So just bear that in mind. Okay, so that's all the cards on. Motherboard's in place, and I've got all the power connections done. That's easily the most challenging part of any build. You've got to work out your power draw as you go, or better still, sit down and plan it all out beforehand. Make sure you've got all the cables you need. If you're going to use splitters, of course, you've got to make sure you don't overpower any of your connections. But basically, if you add up the power draw, research the output for each connector, then you'll be safe. And you'll need to save all your best curse words for doing the cabling, because that's where you're going to use them all up. But the main thing is cable ties are your friend, I think. That's what I've learned, and you want to check all your fans to make sure nothing is sticking into them. Make sure the ends of any cables are all locked away, and then you'll be good to go. So that's all the power. Now I've just got to do the USB connections, Typically, before I connect those, I just like to get the motherboard itself set up, get the OS set up, and get that all working. Then I start connecting the cards, and I find that works best for me. So there we go. Got space on the end for that third card when it arrives. Always a bit of a pain trying to get all the cards in time for your build, but it's no dramas. I've just made sure I've left a socket and a cable that I can use for that, and should be good to go. Okay, so I've got it connected up to a keyboard, mouse and monitor, and I've got my little trusty Windows installer, Windows 10 Pro installer on a USB key there. These motherboards are the easiest to set up. Like literally, you just plug it in, they detect straight away. There's nothing you need to do in the BIOS. I just find they're just super easy. So let's power it up. Cool, the red RGB on these Red Devil cards is pretty cool. Not too bad at all. You notice the fan's not spinning on the power supply. It only starts spinning when the power supply is doing some work. So it's not a dud, it's just not doing anything yet. And we should boot straight into Windows Installer, and we have done. So I'll just go through and do this now. The one I like to install is the Windows Pro N, Windows 10 Pro N. So that's just one that's slightly cut down. It doesn't have all the bloatware on it, which you don't need. And then I just go through, I do a full Windows update, and then I disable Windows Update after that, so it doesn't interrupt with any mining. I uninstall any programs that I'm not going to use, which is basically everything. And I enable remote desktop protocol, so I can connect to the rig remotely. And that just, to get that to work, you just need to enable it in Windows settings, and then you need to enable it through the firewall, Windows Firewall, and then you need to go into group policy. You can just Google that or just run up gpedit.msc and go into group policy and go into your local security settings and enable remote desktop protocol without a password, if that's what you're going to do, not have a password on it. That's what I do on all my mining rigs. I just use a blank password so that they can reboot automatically and log themselves back in if ever there's a power outage or anything like that. And there's really nothing installed, of course, that requires local security. You never keep your any of your wallet information or anything like that on your mining rigs, of course. So that's really all you need. So I'm going to go ahead and set that up now. Okay, there you go. Windows is all installed. I've got the extra card installed on there now too, that arrived. So we've got all 8 GPUs up and running. And so far at least, it is going pretty sweet. Hash rates have been consistent. I've been running it now for about a week and getting around about the 300. So yeah, been pretty happy with that. Between 299 and 303. I'm not pushing the cards. I am having a few issues in my garage here with heat, so I've just got them wound down a little bit, about 32 to 33 on the 6600s and about 46 on the 4600 XTs. So I've played around with the overclock settings a little bit, and basically you couldn't get much simpler. I've just got core clock all the way down, power limit all the way down, memory clock all the way up, and fan speeds at 65, and that's keeping them under 50 degrees. This is for the 6700 XTs. They do run a little warmer than the 6600s. It's definitely noticeable that there's more heat coming off of them. There's also heat coming up from the power supply, of course, so that's probably part of that. So I'll see how they go, and if I have any issues, I can always throw some extra chassis fans on there, but so far they've just been sweet, no dramas at all. And yeah, really happy, really like these cards. And this little motherboard, no issues there with the little T37. And because you've got a bit of extra room on the motherboard, I quite like it. You've got extra room to work in there. There's no risk of anything shorting because you've got some space between the USB connectors, which is good. On some of the ATX boards, they end up basically touching, and it always freaks me out that there's going to be a short across one of those terminals. So I think that's quite a good thing about using one of these boards. Now the whole rig at the wall is using pretty much bang on 800 watts. So that's reading 864, but that's with the monitor plugged in, the keyboard, video, mouse, all of that. So it's probably right, it is actually right on the limits for the 1000 watt power supply. So I might swap that out for a 1200 just to be extra safe, and I can reuse that one on another build. But for now it's all good. So yeah, there you go. If you're wanting to do a rig, if you're wanting to do a first rig, then this probably wouldn't be a bad way to go, to be honest. The motherboard's very easy to set up. These cards are super easy to set up, and the overclocks are dead easy. So it would probably be a pretty good little project. I can recommend it. So cash in some of your Shiba Inu and go out and get yourself some Red Devil cards and put together a rig. That is not investment advice, but it is personal advice. That is what I would do if I were you and I was holding a big bag of Shibu right now. You would probably be able to build the rig for free. Alright guys, have a great day. Thanks heaps for watching my videos. Sorry about the vertical video earlier on. I don't know why my phone flipped like that during recording those two segments. That's super annoying. I hope I haven't put a crook in your neck trying to watch the video sideways. So thanks for bearing with me. If the video's been useful to you and you want to give me a thumbs up, that would be fantastic. And if you are a gamer and you're upset that I bought all these cards and you want to give me a thumbs down, well, I understand. Go ahead and do that if you want to. But I'd rather you give me a pass. That would be kind. Alright guys, take care. All the very best with your mining. If I can answer any questions, just give me a shout down below and I'll do what I can. Take care and all the best. Thanks.